What if everything we think we know about ancient civilizations is missing a crucial piece of the puzzle? Scattered across the globe, hidden in plain sight, lie objects that shouldn't exist, artifacts so baffling they defy logic, science, and sometimes even time itself. From intricate devices that seem centuries ahead of their era to carvings depicting technology no ancient society should have known, these relics whisper secrets that challenge our understanding of human history. Today, we're uncovering 25 of the most mysterious ancient artifacts ever discovered, each one a riddle wrapped in enigma, left behind by cultures long gone but never forgotten. Picture this, a tiny clay figurine buried for thousands of years, its craftsmanship so precise it rivals modern tools, or a map so accurate it shouldn't have been possible without satellite imagery. These aren't just oddities, they're windows into worlds we barely comprehend. Some artifacts align with celestial events we've only recently decoded, while others hint at lost knowledge, advanced civilizations, or even encounters we can't yet explain. They span continents and epochs, from the depths of South American jungles to the sands of ancient Mesopotamia, each with a story that blurs the line between myth and reality. This isn't just a list, it's a journey into the unexplored corners of our past. These artifacts don't just ask questions, they demand we rethink what we've been taught. Who created them, how, and why do so many of these objects seem to point to ideas or technologies that shouldn't have existed for millennia? As we dive into each one, you'll feel the thrill of discovery, the unease of the unexplained, and maybe even a spark of wonder at how much history might still be waiting to be rewritten. So let's begin, because the truth is often stranger than anything we could imagine. At the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, just off the coast of a small Greek island, a corroded lump of bronze would rewrite history. Discovered nestled inside a shipwreck in 1901, the Antikythera Mechanism seemed at first glance like little more than a heavily damaged relic. But when researchers carefully examined its fragments, they uncovered something astonishing. A complex system of interlocking gears, dials, and inscriptions so precise it rivaled the craftsmanship of the 18th century. Yet this device wasn't built during the Industrial Revolution. It dated back to somewhere between 150 and 100 BCE, a time when such advanced engineering should have been unimaginable. This wasn't just a tool, it was a masterpiece of ancient astronomy. The mechanism could predict solar eclipses down to the hour, track the cycles of the Olympic Games, and even model the irregular movements of the moon with near-perfect accuracy. Its gears mimicked the mathematical ratios of planetary orbits, a concept so sophisticated that nothing comparable would appear again in Europe for over 1,000 years. How did the ancient Greeks possess such an intricate understanding of celestial mechanics? The inscriptions on the device suggest it wasn't unique, hinting at a lost tradition of scientific instruments that may have once filled libraries or workshops. But the real mystery isn't just what the Antikythera Mechanism could do, it's who built it. No records mention such a device in surviving Greek texts, and no other artifacts like it have ever been found. Some scholars speculate it came from the workshop of Archimedes, the legendary inventor, while others believe it was the product of an entire school of forgotten engineers. The most haunting possibility, that this mechanism was just one fragment of a much larger, vanished scientific tradition, a glimpse into a level of technological sophistication we never knew existed in the ancient world. Every gear, every etched calculation whispers the same question: what else did they know? While the Antikythera Mechanism reveals an advanced grasp of science lost to history, another artifact taunts us with knowledge just out of reach, hidden in plain sight on the delicate pages of a book no one can read. The Voynich Manuscript, discovered in 1912 by a Polish book dealer, is perhaps the most stubborn puzzle ever put to paper. Its 240 pages are filled with looping, alien script that has resisted every attempt at translation, from top cryptographers to artificial intelligence. The words flow like a language with patterns and repetition that suggest real meaning. Yet not a single sentence has ever been deciphered, but the text is only half the mystery. The pages burst with bizarre illustrations, plants that don't match any known species, naked women bathing in interconnected green pools, and astrological charts filled with unfamiliar constellations. Some sections feature intricate diagrams of celestial spheres, while others show roots and leaves so meticulously detailed they seem like a botanist's notes, except no such plants have ever existed. Even the manuscript's materials deepen the enigma. Carbon dating places its vellum between 1404 and 1438, and the ink matches recipes from the same era. This isn't some crude forgery. It was crafted with painstaking care by someone who believed in its purpose. Theories about its origins range from plausible to fantastical. Some argue it's a coded medical text, perhaps a Renaissance quack's attempt to protect trade secrets. Others suggest it's a lost language from a forgotten culture, or even an elaborate psychological experiment designed to mimic the appearance of knowledge without actual content. More daring hypotheses propose extraterrestrial origins or visions from an altered state of consciousness. The most compelling clue: certain plant illustrations resemble species from the Americas continents Europeans hadn't yet discovered when the manuscript was created. Could this be evidence of pre-Columbian transatlantic contact, or just an artist's imagination running wild? What makes the Voynich manuscript uniquely frustrating is that its answer feels almost within grasp. Modern algorithms have detected linguistic structures resembling real languages, and recent studies suggest it might encode a form of early shorthand or proto-Romance dialect. Yet every breakthrough hits a wall. Perhaps that's why it endures, not just as a historical curiosity, but as a mirror. It reflects our own longing to uncover secrets, to believe that somewhere in those swirling glyphs lies a revelation worth centuries of searching. Until then, it remains a beautiful, maddening reminder that some doors to the past are still locked. Imagine a 2,000-year-old clay pot, no bigger than a modern coffee cup, buried in the dusty soil of Iraq. Inside, a copper cylinder wraps around an iron rod, simple components that, when filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar, produce something extraordinary: electricity. Found near Baghdad in 1936, these unassuming jars have sparked one of archaeology's most heated debates. Could the so-called Baghdad Battery truly be evidence of ancient electroplating, or does it hint at a technology we've yet to fully understand? The mechanics are shockingly straightforward. The iron and copper act as electrodes, while the acidic solution serves as an electrolyte. Replicas have generated around 1 volt of electricity, enough to gently tingle your fingers or, theoretically, gild a surface with a thin layer of gold or silver. Some researchers point to gilded artifacts from the same era, suggesting these batteries might have been used in Mesopotamia for electroplating jewelry or religious objects. But here's where the mystery deepens. No wires or conductors have ever been found alongside the jars, and the voltage produced seems too weak for practical use. So why go through the trouble? Alternative theories stretch the imagination. Could priests have used them for medical purposes, delivering mild shocks as part of healing rituals? Ancient texts describe treatments for pain using electric fish. Might these jars have served a similar role? Others propose they were sacred objects designed to harness unseen forces for spiritual ceremonies. The most tantalizing possibility, that they were merely one piece of a larger, lost technology. What makes the Baghdad Battery so fascinating isn't just its potential function, it's the implication. If these were indeed batteries, they predate the modern understanding of electricity by millennia, yet without clearer context, we're left with a puzzle. Perhaps the answer lies not in the jars themselves, but in what's missing. the hands that held them, the minds that conceived them, and the world that might have used them in ways we're only beginning to guess. High above the arid plains of southern Peru, an ancient mystery stretches across nearly 200 square miles of desert. The Nazca Lines, these enormous geoglyphs, some spanning over 600 feet, transform the landscape into a sprawling canvas of geometric shapes, spirals, and staggering depictions of animals like hummingbirds, spiders, and monkeys. But here's the twist. From ground level, they're nearly invisible, mere shallow grooves scratched into the rust-colored earth. It's only when viewed from the sky that their true scale and precision snap into focus, raising the inevitable question: why would a culture from 2,000 years ago create art they could never fully see? Theories about their purpose spiral as wildly as the designs themselves. Some researchers argue the lines functioned as a celestial calendar, aligning with solstices or constellations to track agricultural cycles. Certain glyphs do match astronomical events, like the famous astronaut figure, which some link to the Pleiades star cluster, a group deeply significant in Andean cosmology. Others propose the lines were sacred pathways, walked during rituals to communicate with deities or ancestors. The desert's dry climate preserves even footprints, suggesting processions once moved along these precise routes, their footsteps echoing in ceremonies lost to time. Then there are the more speculative ideas. Could the Nazca have developed primitive hot air balloons to view their work from above? Fragments of what might be balloon materials have been found, though the evidence is thin. More controversially, some point to the line's sheer scale and aerial visibility as potential signals not to gods, but to beings beyond Earth. It's a tantalizing thought, yet modern archaeology leans toward a blend of spiritual and practical purposes. The line's locations often coincide with underground water sources, hinting at a connection to rituals for fertility or rain in this parched land. What makes the Nazca Lines so haunting isn't just their size or mystery, it's the sheer effort behind them. Without drones or blueprints, the creators relied on ropes, stakes, and an intimate knowledge of surveying to etch these figures flawlessly into the earth, a feat of both artistry and engineering. Were they prayers made visible, a map of the cosmos, or something else entirely? The desert keeps its secrets, leaving us to wonder if the true meaning of these lines wasn't meant to be seen at all, but felt by those who once walked beneath the same endless sky. In a remote mountain cave along the China-Tibet border, a discovery in 1938 would ignite one of archaeology's strangest debates. A team led by Professor Kai Pute uncovered hundreds of stone discs, each about a foot wide with a perfect hole in the center, scattered among ancient graves. At first glance, they resembled simple ceremonial objects, but upon closer inspection, spiral grooves stretched from the edges toward the holes, and these grooves weren't just decorative. Under magnification, they revealed rows of tiny, precise hieroglyphs, a script so small and intricate that translating it seemed impossible. According to later claims, the text told an astonishing story. 12,000 years ago, a spacecraft crashed into the mountains and its occupants, the Dropa, became stranded on Earth. The controversy only deepened when Russian researchers allegedly analyzed the discs in the 1960s. They reported that the stones contained high concentrations of cobalt and other metals, vibrating at unusual frequencies when placed on a special turntable, almost as if they stored data. Some even speculated the discs were a kind of alien record, a message left behind by visitors from the stars. But here's where the story fractures. No independent studies have ever verified these claims, and the original discs vanished during the political upheavals in China, leaving only grainy photographs and second-hand accounts. Skeptics argue the entire tale is a hoax, a patchwork of mistranslations and Cold War-era sensationalism. Yet the Dropa Stones persist in popular culture, a magnet for both UFO enthusiasts and historians probing the edges of human knowledge. Could they be evidence of an advanced prehistoric civilization, or perhaps a case of ancient humans interpreting a meteorite's impact through myth? Some scholars suggest the discs might be by ancient Chinese jade artifacts used in rituals. Their glyphs, nothing more than natural weathering patterns misread through wishful thinking. But for others, the mystery lingers like an unsolved riddle. If the discs were mundane, why were they hidden in caves alongside skeletal remains described as unusually small and frail? Why does their design echo modern depictions of flying saucers? Whether artifact or legend, the Dropa Stones challenge us to confront how easily history can blur into myth when evidence slips through our fingers. They remind us that some mysteries aren't just about what we find, but what we're left longing to believe. In the dusty archives of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace lies a map that shouldn't exist, a parchment so precise it defies the limits of 16th century exploration. Drawn in 1513 by Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis, this fragment of vellum shows coastlines with eerie accuracy from the western bulge of Africa to the eastern shores of South America. But the real shock lies at the bottom of the page, a landmass strikingly similar to Antarctica, rendered not as a frozen wasteland, but as a terrain free of ice, with jagged mountain ranges and rivers that align uncannily with modern subglacial surveys. The problem: Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, and its ice cap has existed for at least 6,000 years. How could a 16th century cartographer depict a continent hidden under miles of ice unless he had access to knowledge lost to history? The map's annotations only deepen the mystery. Piri Reis himself wrote that he compiled it from 20 older sources, including charts dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. Some of these, he claimed, were drawn by navigators who knew the whole world. This suggests the map might be a copy of copies, tracing its lineage to ancient seafarers whose discoveries were forgotten. Even more startling is its latitude and longitude grid, which plots locations with mathematical precision, a technique Europeans wouldn't master for another 2 centuries. Skeptics argue the southern landmass could be a distorted version of Patagonia or Australia, but the contours match Antarctica's subsurface topography with unsettling specificity, down to valleys now buried under millennia of ice. Theories about its origins range from the plausible to the extraordinary. Some scholars propose that the map preserves fragments of knowledge from the Library of Alexandria, where ancient geographers might have documented now vanished exploration records. Others point to the possibility of advanced prehistoric civilizations, like the hypothetical culture of Atlantean sailors, who could have mapped the world before the last ice age reshaped coastlines. Then there's the polar hypothesis, that Earth's crust shifted dramatically in antiquity, repositioning landmasses and temporarily exposing Antarctica's ice-free surface to observation. But the most compelling clue might lie in the map's errors. It exaggerates the size of certain islands and omits others, entirely flaws that suggest its sources were pieced together from partial or conflicting accounts. This isn't the work of omniscient ancient astronauts, but of human explorers painstakingly recording what they saw, then passing that knowledge down until it reached Piri Reis. Whether drawn from lost voyages or surviving fragments of ancient science, the map forces us to confront a humbling idea: that history's dark ages might have been far brighter than we realized, their light snuffed out by time, leaving only this ghostly parchment as a whisper of what once was known. Hanging in the dim light of Turin's cathedral, a single piece of linen has sparked centuries of devotion, skepticism, and scientific intrigue. The Shroud of Turin, a 14-foot-long cloth imprinted with the faint, ghostly image of a bearded man bearing wounds consistent with crucifixion, is either one of the most sacred relics in Christendom or history's most elaborate forgery. First documented in medieval France in the 1350s, the shroud's origins are shrouded in mystery, with some believers tracing it back to the tomb of Jesus himself. But what makes this artifact uniquely compelling isn't just its religious significance, it's the way it sits at the crossroads of faith and science, defying easy explanation. Modern technology has only deepened the enigma. In 1978, a team of scientists subjected the shroud to an exhaustive analysis. The image they discovered wasn't painted or dyed. It was a superficial discoloration of the linen's fibers, less than a micrometer deep, with no traces of pigment. The burn marks and bloodstains, those matched medieval descriptions of crucifixion to an eerie degree, including puncture wounds on the wrists rather than the palms, a detail unknown to most medieval artists. Even more baffling, the image behaves like a photographic negative. When reversed, the figure gains three-dimensional depth, as if the cloth captured a burst of radiant energy. Some researchers speculate it could be the result of a rare chemical reaction, perhaps triggered by trauma or decomposition gases, but no known process fully replicates its unique properties. Then came the bombshell. In 1988, carbon dating tests placed the shroud's origin between 1260 and 1390, squarely in the medieval period. Case closed, not quite. Critics pointed out the sample was taken from a corner likely repaired after a fire, potentially contaminating results. Later studies noted unusual chemical signatures in the linen, suggesting it might be far older than the carbon date indicated. The debate rages on, with some scientists proposing the shroud could be a type of medieval proto-photography, created using silver salts and sunlight, while others insist no known medieval technique could achieve such precision. What lingers beyond the science is the shroud's emotional power. Whether divine artifact or human masterpiece, it forces us to confront how deeply we long for tangible connections to history's greatest mysteries. Its stains and folds whisper of suffering, its silent image an unanswered question. If this isn't proof, why does it feel like a mirror, reflecting both our doubt and our yearning to believe? High in the Andes, overlooking the ancient city of Cusco, stands a fortress so precisely built it seems to defy the very laws of physics. The walls of Sacsayhuamán, assembled from gigantic limestone boulders, some weighing over 300 tons, fit together so tightly that not even a razor blade can slip between them. The stones aren't just stacked, they're interlocked with intricate, zigzagging edges that look like puzzle pieces carved by a master craftsman. But here's the twist: this architectural marvel wasn't built in the age of cranes and lasers. It dates back to the 15th century, crafted by the Inca using nothing more than stone hammers, bronze tools, and an astonishing understanding of geometry. What baffles engineers isn't just the size of these stones, it's how they were transported and positioned. The nearest quarry lies over 20 miles away across rugged mountain terrain. Without wheels or draft animals stronger than llamas, how did the Inca move these colossal blocks? Some theories suggest a system of ramps, ropes, and log rollers, yet no evidence of such infrastructure survives. Even more perplexing is the precision of the cuts. The stones curve and tilt to match their neighbors perfectly, creating walls capable of withstanding earthquakes that have toppled modern buildings. This wasn't just brute strength, it was a sophisticated science passed down through generations but never recorded in any surviving texts. The purpose of Sacsayhuamán only adds to the intrigue. While Spanish chroniclers called it a fortress, its layout suggests something grander, perhaps a ceremonial center or even a solar observatory. The zigzag walls align with solstice sunrises, and the acoustics of the site amplify whispers between certain stones, as if designed for ritual communication. Some researchers speculate the Inca inherited knowledge from an even older civilization, one that mastered stonework long before them. Local legends speak of Viracocha, a bearded god who taught the art of construction, a story eerily echoed in myths across other ancient cultures. What lingers most isn't just the mystery of how Sacsayhuamán was built, but why its techniques vanished. The Spanish dismantled parts of the walls to construct churches, yet the remaining stones still mock our assumptions about ancient technology. They stand as a silent challenge, daring us to unravel their secrets or admit that some knowledge once lost may never be fully recovered. Buried in a layer of Cretaceous rock dating back over 100 million years, a rusted metal hammer sits encased in solid stone, an artifact so out of place it seems to defy the very timeline of human history. Discovered in 1936 near London, Texas, the so-called London hammer was embedded in limestone alongside fossilized shells, its wooden handle partially transformed into coal. The problem: modern humans wouldn't evolve for another 99 million years, and metalworking wouldn't emerge until at least 4000 BC. So how did this tool end up sealed inside ancient rock, waiting to challenge everything we thought we knew about technological progress? At first glance, the hammer appears ordinary, a 6-inch metal head with a tapered end, fitted to a handle that curves slightly from use. But scientific analysis reveals anomalies. The metal lacks the slag or imperfections typical of 19th century blacksmithing, and its composition includes unusual ratios of iron, chlorine, and sulfur, unlike any known modern alloy. Geologists who examined the surrounding rock confirmed it hadn't been disturbed or artificially fused. The hammer was entombed naturally, as if dropped into wet sediment that hardened around it over eons. This poses a maddening paradox. Either the hammer is a miraculously preserved relic of an impossibly advanced prehistoric civilization, or our understanding of geological processes is missing a critical piece. Skeptics argue the hammer might be a miner's tool from the 1800s, left behind in a pocket of quickly cementing mineral deposits, yet even this theory strains credulity. The rock's age was verified through multiple dating methods, and the hammer's position deep within unbroken strata rules out recent intrusion. Others suggest it could be a hoax deliberately planted, but no contemporary accounts of such a prank exist, and the finder, a local hiker, had no motive or expertise to fabricate it. The most radical interpretation, that the hammer is evidence of time travel, extraterrestrial visitation, or a lost cycle of human-like civilizations erased by cataclysm. What makes the London hammer uniquely tantalizing isn't just its mystery, it's the way it exposes the limits of our historical frameworks. If this tool is genuine, it forces us to reconsider how innovation emerges and vanishes across deep time. Perhaps it's a survivor from a forgotten epoch when other hands in another age grasped tools we're only beginning to recognize as our own. Until science can fully explain its origin, the hammer remains a silent challenge, lodged in stone like a question mark at the end of humanity's story. A single silver coin, smaller than a fingernail, unearthed from the mud of a Native American shell midden in Maine, might hold the key to rewriting an entire chapter of history. Known as the Maine penny, this worn Norse artifact dates back to the 11th century, centuries before Columbus set sail, and was found nestled among the remains of a 12th century Wabanaki settlement. Minted in Norway during the reign of King Olaf Kyrre, its presence on the other side of the Atlantic raises a tantalizing possibility. Did Viking explorers venture farther south into North America than we ever realized, leaving traces of contact long buried? The coin's discovery in 1957 at the Goddard archaeological site sent shockwaves through the academic world. At first glance, it seemed like a fluke, perhaps traded from Norse settlements in Newfoundland's Elance Orks Meadows, the only confirmed Viking site in North America. But here's the catch: that settlement lies over 1,000 miles north of Maine. No other Norse artifacts have ever been found along that stretch of coastline, making this coin a maddening outlier. Was it carried south by indigenous trade networks, passed hand to hand over generations? Or is it evidence of an unrecorded Viking voyage, a fleeting visit lost to time? Skeptics argue the coin could have been planted or accidentally dropped by a modern collector, but the context of its discovery undermines those theories. It lay beneath layers of undisturbed soil alongside other Wabanaki artifacts from the same era. The Wabanaki were skilled traders, known to exchange goods across vast distances, so the idea that this coin traveled through pre-existing networks isn't far-fetched. Yet its isolation remains puzzling. If the Norse did reach Maine, why no tools, no ship remnants, no other coins? The implications ripple far beyond a single silver piece. Viking sagas mention expeditions to a place they called Vinland, likely referring to parts of eastern Canada. But the main penny hints that their journeys might have extended further, perhaps as brief, failed attempts at trade or exploration. It's a reminder that history isn't a fixed narrative but a puzzle with missing pieces, some of which might still lie buried, waiting to tilt our understanding of the past. What makes this artifact so compelling isn't just its existence, but the questions it refuses to answer. Did a Norse sailor once stand on the shores of Maine, gazing at the same pine forests we see today? Or did this coin travel silently through indigenous hands, a silent witness to connections we're only beginning to glimpse? Until more evidence surfaces, the main penny remains a whisper from the shadows of history, daring us to listen. Deep within the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, a series of carved reliefs cling to the sandstone walls, their meanings debated for over a century. At first glance, they seem to depict typical Egyptian iconography: serpents, gods, and lotus flowers. But one particular carving stands out. It shows a glowing, elongated object resembling a giant light bulb, cradled by a priestly figure, with a twisted filament inside and a cable-like tendril snaking toward what could be interpreted as a power source. To some, this is unmistakable proof of ancient electrical knowledge, a relic of forgotten technology hidden in plain sight. To others, it's a classic case of modern eyes misreading ancient symbols. So which is it? Mainstream Egyptologists have a straightforward explanation. The so-called Dendera light is actually a symbolic representation of a jed pillar, a sacred emblem of stability, wrapped with a lotus stem and crowned by a serpent representing the sun god Ra emerging from a flower. The filament aligns with known artistic conventions for depicting cosmic snakes, while the cable matches hieroglyphic shorthand for divine energy. These elements frequently appear in other temple carvings as part of creation myths, showing the birth of light from primordial darkness, a spiritual concept, not a technical diagram. Even the chamber where the relief was found, the temple's crypt, was a space for storing sacred objects, not an ancient power station. Yet the alternative theory persists, fueled by tantalizing details. The bulb-like object's proportions mirror early 20th century Crookes tubes, experimental electrical devices that glow when charged. The cable terminates at a box held by a baboon, an animal associated with Thoth, the god of wisdom, but also, coincidentally, a creature some fringe researchers liken to an insulator. Proponents of the lost technology hypothesis point to other anomalies. The absence of soot in certain temple passages where torches would have blackened ceilings, or the Baghdad batteries found hundreds of miles away, suggesting ancient cultures might have dabbled in electrochemistry. Could the Dendera relief be a stylized blueprint, a way to encode advanced knowledge within sacred art? The debate crystallizes a fundamental tension in archaeology: how to interpret the past without projecting modern assumptions onto it. Ancient Egyptians were masterful engineers. Their pyramids and obelisks still baffle us, but does that mean they harnessed electricity, or simply that their symbolic language was rich enough to inspire such speculation? Perhaps the truth lies in the middle. The relief might not depict a literal light bulb, but it could encode an understanding of natural phenomena like bioluminescence or static electricity, observed and mythologized. After all, the Nile's waters were known to shimmer with electric catfish, creatures capable of delivering shocks, a phenomenon priests might have interpreted as divine power. What makes the Dendera light so compelling isn't just the question of what it represents, but why we're so eager to see modernity in antiquity. It reflects our own awe at the past's ingenuity, and a quiet hope that ancient people were closer to our level of advancement than we've dared to imagine. Whether sacred symbol or schematic, the carving endures as a testament to human curiosity, both theirs and ours. Rising from a quiet Georgia field like a modern-day Stonehenge, the Georgia Guidestones stood as one of America's most enigmatic monuments until they were violently toppled in 2022. Erected in 1980 under a veil of secrecy, this 19-foot-tall granite structure bore 10 directives carved in 8 languages from English to Swahili, each offering stark instructions for humanity's survival. But who built it? The only clue was a mysterious patron who went by the pseudonym R.C. Christian, claiming to represent a group of thinkers planning for an age of reason. The stone's messages ranged from pragmatic, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, to ominous, guide reproduction wisely improving fitness and diversity. Critics called it everything from a blueprint for global depopulation to a new world order manifesto. Conspiracy theorists latched onto its numerical alignments. The central pillar's slots tracked the sun's solstices and equinoxes, while a small hole drilled at eye level framed the North Star, suggesting an astronomical purpose beyond mere symbolism. The Guidestone's cold, utilitarian tone struck many as dystopian, yet others argued its calls for environmental stewardship and international cooperation were prescient. Then, just as debates peaked, the monument's fate took a dramatic turn. In July 2022, explosions rocked the site, an act of vandalism later claimed by conspiracy-minded activists, and the surviving fragments were demolished by authorities over safety concerns. But the stone's legacy lingers. Were they a warning, a prophecy, or simply an elaborate art project? The identity of R.C. Christian remains buried, his motives as cryptic as the monument's inscriptions. Perhaps the Guidestones' greatest lesson wasn't in their words, but in how they mirrored our deepest anxieties, the fear of unseen forces shaping our future, and the fragility of even the hardest stone when faced with the tide of human suspicion. Buried near the shores of Lake Titicaca, a simple ceramic bowl might rewrite our understanding of ancient global connections. Discovered in the 1950s by a local farmer, the Fuente Magna bowl looks unremarkable at first glance until you spot the intricate inscriptions covering its interior. These aren't random scratches, they're cuneiform, the wedge-shaped script of ancient Mesopotamia, etched alongside carvings resembling Proto-Sumerian symbols. The problem: this bowl wasn't found in modern-day Iraq. It lay nestled in the highlands of Bolivia, thousands of miles from where cuneiform was ever known to exist. The implications are staggering. If genuine, the bowl suggests contact between Sumerian traders and pre-Columbian South American cultures as early as 2500 BC, centuries before the rise of the Inca or even the Olmec. The inscriptions include fragments of Sumerian dedicatory prayers to the goddess Nisaba, mixed with local geometric motifs. How could two civilizations separated by oceans and millennia share such a specific cultural artifact? Proponents of the bowl's authenticity point to similarities between Sumerian and Andean flood myths, or ancient accounts of seafaring traders venturing beyond known waters. Some even speculate about lost maritime routes or shared ancestral knowledge predating recorded history. Yet skepticism runs deep. Critics highlight glaring issues. The bowl's discovery lacked proper archaeological documentation, and no other Sumerian artifacts have ever surfaced in the Americas. The cuneiform itself shows odd inconsistencies. Some signs are backward or misplaced, as if copied by someone unfamiliar with the script. Radiocarbon dating has been inconclusive due to contamination risks, leaving the bowl's age uncertain. The most damning theory, that it's an elaborate 20th century hoax perhaps planted to fuel pseudo-historical narratives, but here's where the plot thickens. Recent linguistic analyses suggest the inscriptions aren't pure Sumerian but a hybrid script, blending cuneiform with local proto-writing, an unlikely combination for a forger to invent. The bowl's clay composition matches Bolivian sources, ruling out imported materials. And then there's the context. Lake Titicaca's shores are littered with ruins of Tiwanaku, a civilization that flourished millennia later but shared the Sumerians' obsession with celestial alignment and megalithic architecture. Could fleeting contact have seeded ideas across continents, leaving only this bowl as evidence? The Fuente Magna bowl forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. History's map may have more invisible bridges than we've dared to imagine. Whether proof of ancient globalization or a masterful fraud, it challenges us to reconsider how isolationist our view of the past really is, and how much might still lie hidden beneath the Earth's surface, waiting to append the stories we think we know. In a desolate corner of California's Coso Mountains, a discovery in 1961 shattered conventional timelines. What began as a routine rock-hounding expedition turned surreal when a fossil hunter cracked open what appeared to be an ordinary geode, only to find a metallic cylinder embedded at its core. X-ray scans revealed an uncanny resemblance to a 20th century spark plug, complete with a threaded outer casing and a porcelain insulator. But here's the catch. Testing suggested the surrounding rock layer dated back 500,000 years, a time when Homo sapiens hadn't yet evolved, let alone mastered metallurgy. Was this proof of prehistoric engineers or something even stranger? The artifact's defenders highlight troubling inconsistencies. The geode lacked the crystalline structure typical of such formations, instead resembling hardened clay or sediment, a detail that might suggest rapid mineral deposition around a modern object. Yet independent analyses in the 1960s recorded anomalous magnetic properties in the metal, unlike any known contemporary alloys. The porcelain component, often cited as evidence of recent origin, showed microscopic weathering patterns inconsistent with a mere century of aging. Even more puzzling were traces of an unidentified copper-colored residue lining the interior, a substance never replicated in lab tests. Mainstream geologists propose a mundane explanation. The object could be a 1920s-era champion spark plug from mining equipment encased in a concretion, a hard, mineral-rich mass that forms relatively quickly around objects in certain environments. They point to California's history of mineral exploration, where lost tools might have been buried and fossilized within decades, but this theory stumbles on the rock's alleged age. If the dating methods were accurate, how did a 20th century artifact become sealed inside half-a-million-year-old strata? Fringe theories lean into the mystery. Some speculate it's a relic of an advanced ancient civilization, perhaps the mythical Lemurians said to have inhabited the Pacific before sinking beneath the waves. Others whisper about time loops or extraterrestrial visitors leaving technological breadcrumbs. The most haunting possibility, that it's evidence of cyclical human development, proof that industrial societies have risen and collapsed before, their achievements ground to dust by the weight of millennia. What lingers isn't just the question of the Coso artifact's origin, but what it reveals about our hunger for anomalies. We're drawn to objects that defy classification because they mirror our deepest curiosity. The suspicion that history's official record is incomplete and that somewhere, buried in stone or hidden in plain sight, lie clues to realities we're not yet ready to admit. Until definitive testing can be replicated, the artifact remains a Rorschach test, a metallic ink blot reflecting whatever we dare to believe. In a small Peruvian town nestled along the desert's edge, a collection of stones has ignited a firestorm of controversy, and not for the reasons you might expect. The Ica Stones, numbering in the thousands, are anything but ordinary river rocks. Carved into their surfaces are scenes that seem to defy the very fabric of history. Humans interacting with dinosaurs, performing complex surgical procedures, and even observing celestial events with telescope-like precision. Discovered in the 1960s by a local farmer, these stones reportedly came from caves near the Ica River, their origins shrouded in tales of ancient libraries and lost civilizations. But here's the burning question. Could these intricate carvings truly be relics of a forgotten epoch? Or are they an elaborate mid-century hoax designed to cash in on humanity's love of mystery? The case for authenticity hinges on unsettling details. Many stones depict dinosaurs with startling anatomical accuracy, sauropods with whip-like tails, theropods with correct limb proportions, long before modern paleontology had reconstructed these creatures so precisely. Even more baffling are scenes showing what appears to be advanced medical knowledge: open heart surgeries, cesarean sections, and organ transplants, all rendered with a clarity that suggests the carvers witnessed these procedures firsthand. Some stones even map constellations invisible to the naked eye, implying access to optics or astronomical records far beyond pre-Columbian capabilities. Radiocarbon dating of organic residues embedded in the engravings has yielded inconsistent but occasionally ancient dates, fueling speculation that at least some stones predate Spanish colonization. Yet the hoax theory is equally compelling. The stone's most vocal promoter, a local physician named Javier Cabrera, collected the bulk of them from a single farmer who later admitted, under oath, to carving them himself using modern tools. The farmer claimed he'd been inspired by comic books and textbooks, blending pop culture with prehistoric imagery to create antiquities for the tourist trade. Skeptics point to the carving's crisp, unweathered edges, which lack the patina expected of centuries-old artifacts, and their sheer volume over 15,000 stones, which seems implausible for a genuine ancient cache. Even the medical scenes mirror 20th century surgical practices rather than any known pre-Columbian techniques, a telltale anachronism. But here's where the water's muddy. Not all stones trace back to the confessed forger. Some were unearthed in undisturbed archaeological layers, and a handful bear weathering patterns consistent with great age. Indigenous oral traditions from the region speak of a library of stones preserving ancestral knowledge, a legend that predates Cabrera's collection by centuries. Could there be a core of genuine artifacts amid the modern replicas, their existence exploited and diluted by opportunists? The Ica Stones ultimately pose a deeper dilemma. They force us to confront how easily our hunger for wonder can blur the line between discovery and deception. Whether ancient or modern, their imagery taps into something primal: the desire to believe that our ancestors knew more than we've credited them for, and that history's pages might still hold secrets bold enough to rewrite science itself. Until every stone is rigorously tested and contextualized, they remain a riddle wrapped in a paradox, a reminder that sometimes the most compelling mysteries aren't about what's real, but why we so desperately want them to be. Along the banks of the Mureș River in Romania, construction workers unearthed a relic so out of place it seemed to belong to another world entirely. Buried under 35 feet of Pleistocene-era sediments, a layer dating back at least 11,000 years, lay a wedge-shaped metal object, its surface pitted with age. At first glance, it could have passed for a routine excavation find, but when scientists analyzed its composition, they were met with disbelief. The artifact was made of aluminum, a metal that wasn't smelted by humans until the early 19th century. How could an industrially produced material end up encased in deposits older than recorded history? This is the riddle of the Ayod wedge, an artifact that refuses to fit neatly into any timeline. The wedge's design only deepens the puzzle. Roughly 8 inches long, it features a rectangular base with a concave groove, suggesting it might have served as part of a larger mechanical assembly. The metal itself is an alloy composed of 89% aluminum mixed with copper, zinc, and traces of other elements, a combination modern engineers might use to reduce wear in high-friction components. Some researchers speculate it could be part of an ancient tool, perhaps even a landing gear fragment from some long-lost machine. But here's the catch: aluminum doesn't occur naturally in its metallic form. Extracting it requires an advanced process called electrolysis, a technology developed in 1825. Without it, the ore remains locked in bauxite, invisible and useless to early civilizations. Mainstream archaeologists propose a more mundane explanation. The wedge might be a piece of 20th century mining equipment, perhaps a tooth from a bulldozer bucket that became embedded in older layers due to shifting sediments or human activity. Yet this theory stumbles on the artifact's depth and the undisturbed strata around it. The Pleistocene layer where it was found showed no signs of modern intrusion, and the wedge itself bore heavy oxidation consistent with millennia of burial. Even more perplexing, its alloy ratios don't match standard industrial blends, raising questions about its origins. Could it be a remnant of a forgotten metallurgical experiment, or evidence of a technological anomaly lost to time? Then there's the fringe perspective, that the wedge is a relic from an advanced prehistoric civilization, one that mastered techniques we've only rediscovered in recent centuries. Proponents of this view point to its resemblance to aerospace components, speculating about ancient flying machines or even extraterrestrial visitors. Others suggest it might be debris from a meteorite, though no known natural process produces aluminum alloys in this configuration, the most haunting possibility. That human ingenuity has flickered on and off across the ages, leaving behind scattered fragments like this one, artifacts that whisper of knowledge gained, then lost, then rediscovered in an endless cycle. What makes the Ayod wedge so compelling isn't just its defiance of conventional timelines, but what it reveals about our own assumptions. We're quick to dismiss anomalies as hoaxes or mistakes, yet every once in a while, an object like this slips through the cracks, forcing us to wonder if history's narrative is far more fluid than we've been taught. Until further testing can pinpoint its true age and origin, the wedge remains a metallic question mark lodged in the earth like a challenge, waiting for someone to decode its secrets. Deep in the vaults of Colombia's Gold Museum, a cluster of tiny golden figurines sits behind glass objects so bizarre they seem to defy their own era. Known as the Quimbaya artifacts, these intricate pieces date back to around 1000 CE, crafted by a pre-Columbian culture renowned for their metallurgical skill. But what makes them extraordinary isn't just their craftsmanship, it's their uncanny resemblance to modern aircraft. With delta wings, stabilizers, and even what appear to be cockpits, these gold models look less like the birds or insects they were once assumed to depict and more like sleek, aerodynamic machines straight out of a 20th century aircraft hangar. The debate over their true nature splits scholars into two camps. Traditional archaeologists argue they're stylized representations of local fauna, perhaps stingrays or birds like the Andean condor with wings swept back for artistic symmetry. Yet even this explanation raises eyebrows. The figurines lack key animal features like eyes or mouths, and their proportions align suspiciously well with principles of aerodynamics that humans wouldn't formally understand for another 900 years. In 1994, German engineers put the theory to the test. They scaled up two of the designs, built radio-controlled models, and stunned observers when the replicas not only flew but handled turbulence with ease, performing maneuvers like banking turns and glides without modifications. How could artisans with no knowledge of flight mechanics accidentally create shapes that perform so flawlessly in the air? Proponents of the ancient aircraft theory point to even stranger details. One figurine's tail fin precisely mirrors the vertical stabilizer on a modern fighter jet, a feature absent in nature. Others show segmented fuselages that resemble fuselage panels, complete with what could be interpreted as landing gear. Even more tantalizing are local legends from the Quimbaya region, which speak of flying chariots piloted by gods, stories echoed in myths across other ancient cultures, from India's Vimanas to the sky sleds of Egyptian cosmology. Could these figurines be artistic renditions of real technology, preserved in gold long after the machines themselves crumbled to dust? Skeptics counter with a compelling point. Human imagination is boundless and coincidence can't be ruled out. Artists throughout history have crafted abstract shapes that later generations interpret through the lens of their own technology. The so-called cockpits might represent ritual seats for shamanic journeys, while the wings could symbolize spiritual ascent rather than physical flight. Still, the aerodynamic precision remains difficult to dismiss as mere chance. What lingers isn't just the question of what the Quimbaya figurines depict, but how willingly we project our own technological fantasies onto the past. Whether they're proof of lost engineering or simply masterpieces of symbolic art, they challenge us to reconsider where the line between observation and imagination truly lies. After all, if our ancestors did witness or invent machines that soared through the skies, what other wonders might have been lost to the silence of centuries? Hidden beneath the dense foliage of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, hundreds of stone spheres lie scattered across the landscape like marbles dropped by a giant. Ranging from the size of a bowling ball to massive orbs over 8 feet in diameter and weighing up to 15 tons, these near-perfect spheres have baffled archaeologists since their rediscovery in the 1930s. Carved from hard volcanic rock like granodiorite, their precision is astonishing. Some deviate from true roundness by less than 2 millimeters across their entire surface. In a time before modern tools, how did ancient artisans achieve such geometric perfection? And why did they invest such effort into these mysterious objects? The sphere's origins trace back to the now vanished Diquis culture, which flourished between 700 and 1500 CE. Unlike the haphazard stone arrangements found in other ancient sites, these spheres often appear in deliberate groupings, sometimes aligned in straight lines, arcs, or even mimicking constellations. Some researchers propose they functioned as celestial calendars, their positions marking solstices or lunar cycles. Others suggest they were status symbols for chieftains, their size and quantity reflecting a ruler's power. The most intriguing clusters appear near burial sites, hinting at a spiritual role, perhaps as guides for souls navigating the afterlife or guardians of sacred spaces. The craftsmanship behind these spheres is as enigmatic as their purpose. Without metal tools, the Diquis likely shaped them using a combination of hammering, pecking, and controlled heating, alternately applying fire and water to fracture the stone before painstakingly polishing it with sand. The real puzzle lies in how they transported these massive orbs across miles of rugged terrain. Some theories point to log rollers or rope systems, while local legends speak of a mythical juice that softened the stone temporarily, allowing artisans to mold them like clay, a tantalizing echo of lost techniques. Modern technology has only deepened the intrigue. Laser scans reveal subtle markings invisible to the naked eye, grooves and symbols that might encode astronomical data or tribal histories. Yet many spheres were looted or moved during early 20th century agricultural expansion, their original context lost forever. What remains is a haunting legacy of precision and patience, stone sentinels keeping silent watch over secrets we may never fully unravel. Were they maps of the heavens, monuments to the gods, or simply the ancient world's most audacious art project? Each perfect curve seems to whisper that some answers are meant to stay buried. Tucked within the mineral-rich deposits of South Africa's Precambrian rock layers lie objects that seem to defy the very timeline of life on Earth. Known as the grooved spheres or Klerksdorp spheres, these small metallic orbs, some no larger than a marble, bear strange parallel grooves encircling their surfaces like lines of latitude on a globe. What makes them extraordinary isn't just their appearance, but their age. Embedded in pyrophyllite deposits dating back an astonishing 2.8 billion years, they predate complex life by more than 2 billion years. So how did these precision-grooved objects end up sealed in rock that formed when Earth's atmosphere was still toxic to nearly all living things we know today? At first glance, the spheres resemble industrial ball bearings, their grooves so uniform they appear machined. This has led some researchers to propose they're relics of a hyper-advanced prehistoric civilization, one that mastered metallurgy and manufacturing so long ago that all other traces have vanished into geological time. The idea isn't entirely far-fetched. The pyrophyllite layers where they're found were once sedimentary, meaning the spheres could have been deposited on an ancient seabed before hardening into stone. Their composition, hematite or wollastonite with a shell-like outer layer, adds to the intrigue, as these materials are known for their durability and resistance to weathering. Could they be fragments of some long-lost technology preserved by chance in mineral tombs? Mainstream geologists counter with a simpler explanation. These are natural concretions formed through the same processes that create spherical rocks like Maqui marbles. Under specific conditions, minerals can accumulate around a nucleus, say, a grain of sand, and crystallize in concentric layers, occasionally forming grooves from pressure or mineral banding. Some spheres even split open to reveal fibrous interiors, a feature common in natural formations. As for the grooves, they might result from the whims of crystallization, where softer layers eroded faster than harder ones over eons. Even their metallic sheen isn't unusual. Hematite, a form of iron oxide, often takes on a lustrous, almost industrial appearance when polished by natural forces. Yet the debate refuses to die, fueled by oddities that don't quite fit. Some spheres exhibit a balance and symmetry rarely seen in random mineral formations. Others were found clustered in ways that seem deliberate, not scattered by geological chaos. Then there's the matter of their hardness. Testing by researchers in the 1980s revealed that the spheres were difficult to scratch even with steel tools, suggesting a density beyond typical hematite. If they're natural, why don't we find identical formations elsewhere in the world? Perhaps the most compelling argument against the lost civilization theory is sheer scale. 2.8 billion years ago, Earth's landmasses were barren, its atmosphere devoid of oxygen. Complex life wouldn't emerge for another 2 billion years, let alone tool using beings capable of metallurgy. But here's where the mystery deepens. Could these spheres be evidence of something else entirely? Some scientists speculate they might be microfossils of early microbial life, their grooves the remnants of biological structures mineralized over time. Others propose they're the byproducts of extreme volcanic or hydrothermal activity, shaped by forces we've yet to fully understand. What lingers isn't just the question of what these objects are, but what they represent about our relationship with deep time. They force us to confront how little we know about Earth's earliest epochs, and how eagerly we project our own narratives onto the unknown. Whether marvels of nature or misplaced fragments of a forgotten industrial age, the grooved spheres remain one of geology's most tantalizing riddles, whispering across billions of years to challenge what we think we know about our planet's hidden past. Among the treasures unearthed from Egypt's Saqqara necropolis in 1898, one peculiar artifact stands out not for its gold or grandeur, but for the heated debate it sparks among historians and aviation enthusiasts alike. Known as the Saqqara bird, this 6-inch-long wooden figurine crafted around 200 BC resembles a falcon with stylized wings, yet its design hides a startling secret. When viewed from the side, the artifact's proportions, its angled wings, aerodynamic fuselage, and even a subtle tail stabilizer, look less like a decorative bird and more like a meticulously scaled model of a glider. Could this be evidence that ancient Egyptians understood principles of flight millennia before the Wright brothers? Mainstream Egyptologists dismiss the idea with a straightforward explanation. The bird fits neatly into known funerary traditions, likely representing a stylized depiction of Horus, the falcon-headed sky god. Its lack of legs, a feature common in religious carvings, aligns with symbolic portrayals of deities in flight. The supposed tailplane closely resembles lotus flower motifs found on other ceremonial objects, suggesting artistic convention rather than engineering. Even the materials support this view. Lightweight sycamore wood, commonly used for grave goods, hardly matches the robustness needed for flight experiments. Most tellingly, no contemporaneous texts mention flying machines, and Egypt's arid climate preserves even fragile papyri. So where are the blueprints or records if such technology existed? Yet the glider theory persists, buoyed by intriguing real-world tests. In 2006, aerodynamics expert Simon Sanderson built a scaled-up replica, adjusting only the angle of the wings to account for the missing tail fragment. The result, the model achieved stable gliding flight with a gentle hand launch, capable of carrying small payloads, behavior impossible for a simple bird carving. This performance has led some researchers to speculate the Saqqara bird might be a scaled-down version of a larger ceremonial glider, perhaps used in temple rituals to symbolize divine flight. Others point to Egyptian myths where gods soar through the heavens in celestial boats, wondering if these stories encode lost knowledge of manned kites or early aviation attempts. The debate crystallizes an essential tension in archaeology. Is the resemblance to modern aircraft pure coincidence, a case of pareidolia where we see what we want in ancient art? Or does the artifact hint at fragmented wisdom, a glimpse of practical aerodynamics filtered through religious symbolism? Perhaps the truth lies in the middle. The Saqqara bird may not prove the existence of pharaonic flight schools, but it challenges our assumptions about how observation and intuition could have led to proto-scientific insights long before formal theories of lift and drag. After all, the ancient Egyptians were master observers of nature. If vultures rode thermal currents, might they not have tried to replicate the phenomenon in wood and ritual? Ultimately, the Saqqara bird serves as a mirror. It reflects not just the ingenuity of its creators, but our own fascination with the idea that the past might hold forgotten marvels. Whether sacred object or scaled prototype, it invites us to reconsider how deeply ancient artisans understood the invisible forces, both divine and aerodynamic, that shape our world. Buried beneath the sands of ancient Mesopotamia, a collection of clay figurines from the Ubaid period presents one of archaeology's most unsettling puzzles. Crafted around 5000 BC, these statuettes depict humanoid bodies with elongated heads, almond-shaped eyes, and distinctly reptilian features, slit pupils, scaled textures, and even tails coiling around their legs. Unlike the idealized gods or stylized animals typical of early Sumerian art, these figures exude an eerie specificity, as if modeled from life. Were they symbolic representations of deities, early attempts at depicting medical conditions, or something far more unsettling? The debate over the Ubaid lizardmen reveals how quickly the line between ritual object and historical enigma can blur. Mainstream archaeology offers a cultural lens for interpreting these statues. The Ubaid culture, which flourished in what's now Iraq before the rise of Sumer, left behind few written records, but their art suggests a deep connection to the natural world. Some scholars propose the figurines represent shamanic transformations, with the reptilian traits symbolizing spiritual transcendence or clan totems. Similar motifs appear in later Mesopotamian myths, where serpentine beings like the Apkallu were revered as bringers of wisdom. Others argue the statues might depict people with congenital conditions such as hydrocephalus, which can elongate the skull, or genetic disorders affecting skin texture. The figure's frequent portrayal holding infants or breastfeeding adds weight to this theory, suggesting they were venerated as protectors rather than feared as monsters. Yet alternative theories bristle with more speculative intrigue. The figurines' postures, often standing upright with their hands resting on their hips, project an unnerving confidence, unlike the stooped or kneeling poses of other contemporary art. Their tapered heads and oversized eyes bear an uncanny resemblance to modern depictions of extraterrestrials, fueling speculation about ancient contact with otherworldly beings. Proponents of this view point to global parallels: the serpent gods of Mesoamerica, the Naga of Hindu-Buddhist lore, even the reptilian overlords of contemporary conspiracy theories. Could these statues be evidence of a shared cultural memory, a lingering whisper of encounters with something beyond human understanding? The truth may lie somewhere in the middle. Recent excavations at Ubaid sites reveal the figurines were often placed in domestic spaces, near hearths or burial sites, hinting at a role in household rituals rather than grand cosmic narratives. Some show wear patterns suggesting they were handled frequently, perhaps as talismans for fertility or protection. Their reptilian features might have symbolized renewal or resilience, qualities embodied by creatures that shed their skin. Still, the sheer consistency of these depictions across centuries of Ubaid art raises questions. Why would a culture with no known zoological obsession with reptiles return to this motif so persistently? What makes the Ubaid lizardmen unforgettable isn't just their strangeness, but what they reveal about our own fascination with the alien in antiquity. They force us to confront how easily we project our fears and fantasies onto the past, and how often the past throws those projections back in our faces, daring us to explain the inexplicable. Whether sacred symbols or stone-cold mysteries, these clay figures endure as a testament to humanity's oldest habit, reaching into the unknown and shaping what we find into forms we can almost but never quite understand. Imagine a farmer in rural Minnesota, knee-deep in soil as he uproots a tree in 1898, only to strike something solid beneath the roots. What he pulled from the earth would ignite a firestorm of debate, a 200-pound slab of greywacke sandstone, its face carved with cryptic symbols that seemed to whisper of distant shores and forgotten voyages. The Kensington runestone, as it came to be known, bore a message in Old Norse runes: 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians on an exploration journey from Vinland. We camped by 2 skerries one day's journey north from this stone. We were out fishing one day. Upon our return, we found 10 men red with blood and dead. AVM Save Us from Evil. Dated to the year 1362, this artifact didn't just suggest Viking explorers had reached Minnesota. It placed them there a full century after the Norse abandoned their Greenland settlements and 130 years before Columbus's famed voyage. Mainstream archaeology has long dismissed the stone as a hoax, pointing to glaring inconsistencies. The runes mix medieval and modern forms, with some characters resembling 19th century Scandinavian handwriting more than 14th century carvings. The language itself raises eyebrows. Phrases like "from Vinland" use a preposition unknown in Old Norse but common in modern Nordic languages. Even the stone's discovery seems suspiciously convenient, unearthed by a Swedish immigrant, Olof Öhman, in a region teeming with Scandinavian settlers who might have relished the idea of their ancestors beating Columbus to the punch. Geologists note the carvings lack the weathering expected after 6 centuries buried in acidic soil, their edges still crisp under magnification, yet the stone's defenders counter with compelling details. The inscription references skerries, small rocky islands, a term deeply specific to Scandinavian seafarers, unlikely to be known by a random farmer forging a relic. The numeric system used matches medieval Norse conventions, not 19th century usage. In 2020, mineral analysis revealed manganese deposits within the carvings, consistent with centuries of natural accumulation rather than recent tool marks. Even the apparent linguistic anachronisms might have explanations. Some scholars argue the text could reflect a forgotten Norse dialect preserved by isolated settlers, far from the linguistic shifts occurring in Europe. The debate takes a stranger turn when you consider the historical context. Norse sagas do mention expeditions beyond their Vinland camp in Newfoundland, including a failed voyage led by Paul Knutson in the 1350s to reclaim lost Greenland colonies. Could some of his men have ventured inland, following rivers to what's now Minnesota? The stones described massacre aligns with indigenous oral histories from the region, which tell of violent clashes with light-skinned strangers around that time. And then there's the runestone's eerie echo of other North American Norse artifacts like the Maine penny or the Beardmore relics, each dismissed in isolation but collectively hinting at a wider, if fleeting, presence. What makes the Kensington runestone so polarizing isn't just the question of its authenticity, but what it reveals about our relationship with history. For Scandinavian Americans, it's a tangible link to a pioneering heritage. For academics, it's a cautionary tale about how easily national pride can cloud scholarly rigor. And for conspiracy theorists, proof of systemic suppression, a smoking gun suggesting established historians fear rewriting textbooks. The truth may lie in the middle. Perhaps the stone is a later artifact carved by a lonely Norse descendant preserving his people's oral history long after the fact. Or maybe it's an elaborate hoax that accidentally stumbled upon a deeper truth, that human journeys are far more tangled than records show, and that some stories, whether stone or saga, refuse to be silenced. On a remote island already famous for its towering stone heads, another mystery hides in plain sight. But this one fits in the palm of your hand. The Rongorongo tablets of Easter Island, 26 surviving wooden slabs covered in intricate glyphs, contain the only known indigenous writing system to emerge in the entire Pacific. Yet despite over a century of study, not a single symbol has been definitively deciphered. What makes these tablets so stubborn? Their glyphs, stylized figures of birds, plants, and geometric shapes aren't just decorative. They're arranged in a system so precise that lines of text alternate direction in a pattern called reverse boustrophedon, zigzagging like an ox plowing a field. This isn't random scribbling, it's a structured language, one that vanished along with the last elders who could read it. The tablet's origins are as murky as their meaning. Local tradition claims they arrived with Hotu Matar, the island's mythical founder, though carbon dating places them between the 15th and 17th centuries after the first Polynesian settlers. Some scholars suspect Rongorongo developed after European contact in 1722, inspired by the sudden awareness of writing. But if so, why does it share no similarities with Latin script? Others argue the script is far older, pointing to parallels with petroglyphs found in island caves, where similar symbols have been dated back 800 years. The most haunting theory, that Rongorongo wasn't just a writing system, but a last-ditch effort to preserve knowledge as the island's ecosystem collapsed. Easter Island's infamous ecological disaster adds eerie context. By the time missionaries arrived in the 1860s, they reported natives chanting while tracing the glyphs with their fingers, but none could explain their meaning. The island's deforestation, warfare, and population crash had severed the chain of oral tradition. Without interpreters, the tablets became locked vaults. Modern attempts to crack the code hit the same wall as the Voynich Manuscript. Without a Rosetta Stone to link symbols to known words, even AI analysis stalls. Some glyphs resemble Polynesian tattooing motifs, suggesting ritual or genealogical content. Others look like calendar notations, tracking lunar cycles or bird migration, critical knowledge for a society teetering on starvation. The most tantalizing clue lies in a single weathered tablet called the Santiago staff. Unlike others, its glyphs are paired with what appear to numerical notations. Could this be a ledger, a king list, or even instructions for rationing resources during famine? Until someone cracks the code, we're left with ghostly traces of a lost dialogue, carved in wood but silent as the island's fallen moe. The tragedy of Rongorongo isn't just the loss of language, it's the nagging sense that the answers to Easter Island's collapse might be etched on these tablets, waiting for the right pair of eyes to read them. Scattered across the rolling highlands of northern Laos, an ancient mystery lies half buried in the earth. Thousands of giant stone jars, some as tall as 9 feet, their rough-hewn surfaces weathered by centuries of wind and rain. These megalithic vessels, numbering over 2,000 across more than 90 sites, form what's known as the Plain of Jars, a haunting landscape that raises more questions than answers. Carved from sandstone, granite, or limestone, each jar weighs several tons, their cylindrical or bulbous shapes ranging from simple to ornate, some surrounded by stone discs that might have once served as lids. Dating back as early as 500 BC, their origin and purpose remain stubbornly opaque, a riddle left behind by a culture that vanished without leaving written records or even a name. The most widely accepted theory ties the jars to funeral rites. Excavations have uncovered human remains, burial goods, and ceramic vessels near many of them, suggesting they might have been used to decompose bodies before secondary burials or to store cremated ashes. Local legends support this idea, speaking of a giant king who brewed rice wine in the jars to celebrate a military victory, a possible metaphor for the vessel's role in rituals honoring the dead. Yet not all jars contain remains, and their distribution clustered in groups from just a few to several hundred hints at a more complex story. Were they territorial markers for an ancient kingdom, storage silos for grain or water in a region prone to drought? The sheer labor required to carve and transport them suggests a society with considerable organization and resources, yet no trace of their settlements has been found nearby. Alternative interpretations only deepen the enigma. Some jars are positioned along mountain passes or near ancient trade routes, leading researchers to speculate they might have been waypoints for caravan travelers holding supplies or offerings. Others note that many jars align with celestial events, their openings facing sunrise during solstices, a feature common in megalithic cultures worldwide. Then there's the unsettling detail of the stone discs. Found near many jars, these slabs are often pitted with hollows that could have held smaller vessels or ritual fires, adding a layer of ceremony to the sites. Could the jars have been part of a massive astronomical calendar or platforms for sky burials where the dead were exposed to the elements? The mystery is compounded by the jars' creators themselves. No tools or workshops have been discovered in the region, and the jars' stylistic variations suggest they were made over centuries by different groups. Some bear carvings of human figures or geometric patterns, while others are utterly plain, as if their function mattered more than their form. The few clues come from rare artifacts found nearby: bronze bracelets, iron tools, and glass beads, hinting at connections to the wider Iron Age cultures of Southeast Asia. Yet, unlike their contemporaries, the jar makers left no temples, no cities, no clear descendants. Their anonymity feels deliberate, as if they wanted only these silent stone sentinels to speak for them. What lingers isn't just the question of what the jars were for, but why they resonate so deeply today. Wandering among them, you can't escape the sense that they were meant to endure, to outlast memories and empires alike. Perhaps that was their true purpose, not just to hold the dead or the harvest, but to remind us that some questions are meant to stretch across millennia unanswered. The plane of jars doesn't whisper its secrets, it stands in silent challenge, daring us to unravel a past that refuses to fit neatly into any textbook. Beneath the quiet farmland of Zhejiang province in China, an underground world of staggering scale and precision lies hidden. The Longyu Caves, discovered in 1992 by a curious villager draining a local pond, these caverns aren't natural formations. They're a sprawling network of 24 hand-carved chambers, each one a masterpiece of ancient engineering. The scale alone defies belief. Some caves stretch over 130 feet high, with pillars supporting ceilings and walls so smooth they reflect torchlight like polished marble. But the real shock comes from the details. Every surface is covered in uniform chisel marks, running in parallel lines at a precise 60-degree angle, a pattern repeated across hundreds of thousands of square feet of stone. This wasn't haphazard excavation. It was a systematic, almost obsessive act of carving, executed with a level of coordination that rivals modern construction projects. The mystery deepens when you consider what's missing. No tools were left behind, no waste rubble, not even a single inscription or charcoal smudge to hint at the creator's identity. Carbon dating places the cave's construction around 2,200 years ago during the Western Han Dynasty, yet no historical records mention this colossal undertaking. How could a pre-industrial society, even one as advanced as the hand carve over 300,000 cubic meters of rock in near total secrecy? The logistics boggle the mind. Calculations suggest excavating just one cave would have required 1,000 workers laboring non-stop for 6 years. Yet the absence of debris implies the stone was hauled away and disposed of elsewhere, a feat requiring additional thousands of laborers. For a project this massive, where are the worker camps, the tool forges, the administrative records? Even more perplexing are the cave's design choices. The walls and ceilings aren't just flat, they're meticulously angled, with slopes and curves that suggest an understanding of acoustics or structural stress distribution far ahead of their time. In Cave 35, sound tests revealed an eerie phenomenon. Striking the wall in one corner produces a clear, resonant tone that echoes through the chamber, while other areas absorb sound completely. Was this intentional? Some researchers propose the caves functioned as ritual spaces where specific frequencies played a role in ceremonies. Others note the pillars are arranged in patterns mirroring constellations, hinting at an astronomical purpose. Then there's the matter of the fish and bird carvings found in one chamber, symbols often associated with imperial power. Could these caves have been a clandestine project commissioned by an emperor, later scrubbed from history after a regime change? Theories about the cave's purpose range from practical to fantastical. Local lore speaks of a legendary king storing treasure here, while historians suggest they might have been quarries for building nearby cities, though the precision of the carvings makes this unlikely. More controversial hypotheses point to the caves as evidence of lost technology or even extraterrestrial influence, citing the sheer scale and mathematical precision of the angles. But the most compelling explanation might be the simplest, that we've underestimated the ambition and organizational prowess of the Han Dynasty. Recent studies note the caves align with underground water channels, suggesting they could have been part of a massive hydrological system, controlling floods or irrigation in a region prone to droughts. What unsettles archaeologists isn't just the absence of answers, it's the cave's refusal to fit any neat narrative. They stand as a testament to what happens when human ambition meets anonymity. A project so vast it should have left echoes in the historical record, yet now whispers only in stone. The Longyou caves don't ask to be solved. They ask us to reconsider how much of the past remains buried, not just in earth, but in the gaps between what we think we know and what might have truly been. From the intricate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism to the eerie precision of the Longyou caves, these 25 artifacts don't just defy explanation, they shatter the timelines we've carefully constructed for human history. Each one whispers a tantalizing question. Were ancient civilizations far more advanced than we've ever imagined, or did they stumble upon fragments of knowledge that slipped through the cracks of time? The Baghdad Battery hums with the ghost of forgotten electricity, while the Nazca lines stretch across the desert like a celestial blueprint we're still learning to read. The Saqqara bird's sleek wings mock our assumptions about flight, and the Dropa Stones spin a tale that hovers between myth and lost contact. These relics share a common thread: they don't fit. The Fuente Magna bowls cuneiform in Bolivia, the main penny's Norse whispers in pre-Columbian soil, the Quimbaya aircraft gliding through the boundaries of possibility, all of them tug at the seams of our historical narratives. Some might be hoaxes, others misstated or misunderstood, but together they form a mosaic of anomalies that challenge us to rethink what we know. Were there global connections we've underestimated? Did entire civilizations rise and fall without leaving more than a handful of enigmatic clues? Or is human ingenuity itself the true marvel, capable of sporadic leaps that later generations would struggle to explain? The truth may lie somewhere in between. Artifacts like the Shroud of Turin and the Georgia Guidestones remind us that history isn't just about facts, it's about the stories we tell to make sense of them. Some objects may encode genuine lost knowledge, while others reflect our own longing to find patterns in the chaos. But that's the thrill of the hunt. Every unexplained artifact is an invitation to dig deeper, to question, and to wonder. So what do you think? Are these objects proof of forgotten chapters, or simply puzzles we haven't solved yet? Drop your wildest theories in the comments. We're all detectives in the greatest mystery of all, our own past. And if you're hungry for more enigmas, hit subscribe. The past isn't finished surprising us, and neither are we. Until next time, keep questioning. The most fascinating discoveries often begin with a single, impossible artifact.